Good evening and welcome to tonight's edition of The Probe. The former Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, once said affirmative action is an instrument of social engineering to cater for some wrong done by the society that needs to be corrected. He adds that this is the essence of lawmaking. The law is an instrument of mischief correction. And may I add that the time to correct that mischief is now. And his successor, Alban Bagbing, also mentioned that two bills, the affirmative action and the LGBTQ bills, if not passed, MPs will have themselves to blame if their constituents punish them at the upcoming polls. As it stands now, even though females make up 51% of the population, only 3.1% of women are in parliament. Out of 27, that's 30.1, I should say, out of 275 members. Globally, as of February 2019, Ghana is ranked 145 out of 193 countries for women representation in various leadership positions. We know that countries like South Africa, Senegal, Mozambique, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, just to mention a few, not forgetting Guinea and Kenya, etc., have all used some form of affirmative action mechanism to correct the anomaly. But key questions are that women want a special dispensation regime introduced specially for them by asking for 30% representation at various levels. These are some of the questions. And that men will be displaced in a bid to make women more powerful than men. But is that really the case? My guest tonight will help us delve deeper into the affirmative action or gender equality bill currently before Parliament. I have joining me via Zoom is Kwame Enyimedwentwi, is a chairman, a Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Also, Madame Sheila Minkaprem is convener of the AAL Coalition. I also have Vera Abnado, a program officer, CDD Ghana, and Francis Xavier Susu is a member, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Probe.
Thank you.
You can unmute so I can hear you, then we can test off and then go on.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Great. I can hear you all. And thank you for spending your Sunday evening with me. I'm sure it's for a good cause. We'll talk about the affirmative action. Stay with me here on the Joy News channel. We're also on Joy 99.7 FM. We're on myjoyonline.com and every social media platform that exists under the sun. We're live there as well. All you have to do is to get interactive and send us a message as well along the line. I am Emefa Apau, and this is The Probe. We're right back. We get talking. Welcome back, and many thanks for staying with us here on The Probe, live on the Joy News channel on Joy 99.7 FM. Tonight, we are focusing on the affirmative action gender equality bill that's currently before Parliament. We'll get to understand all that we need to know when it comes to the affirmative action. And thankfully, I have a diverse guest with me right here on Zoom. And Kwame Enyimedwentwi is a chairman, Constitutional and Legal Affairs, Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Sheila Minkaprem, convener, the AAL Coalition. I also have Vera Abnado, is a program officer for CDD Ghana, and Francis Xavier Susu, member, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Many thanks once again for your company here on The Probe. I'd like to start with you, Sheila, because I know the extent of work that we've done when it comes to the affirmative action. But really, the key question is, what is wrong with the current system we have such that we need a law like the affirmative action?
Thank you very much. The problem that we have is that women are marginalized when it comes to decision-making positions as well as governance positions in Ghana as we speak. In your intro, you indicated that currently in Parliament, out of our 275-member Parliament, we only have 40 women, making it 14.5%. Mm-hmm. At the local government level, where we have our lowest level in the recent elections that took place, less than 4% of women were elected as assembly members. When you look at the numbers of DCEs who are appointed, also less women. If you look at the number of ministers, both of cabinet level, etc., the men outnumber the women by large. So in a population where we have 51% of our population being women, as you mentioned, when it comes to key decision-making positions, you have very few women, and this is not right. This is not in accordance with the numerous international obligations that Ghana has, as well as our own 1992 Constitution. So the whole essence of the Affirmative Action Bill is to right this historical wrong. And there's room for this based on our international obligations as well as the 1992 Constitution.
But the concern, I'm sure, this is not the first time you may have heard this before, but really all the areas that you mentioned, why do we need a law to get women represented at these levels? If women are competent enough, why don't they just take up these positions? Do we have to make a special dispensation for them before such positions can be filled by women?
Okay. The reality is that there are so many things in our country, as well as in many other countries, that has resulted in the marginalization of women. Okay, culturally, men are supposed to be the leaders. Okay, we have a lot of traditional sayings. Among the Akan people, there's a saying that about there are so many other sayings. So you will find that culturally, it's not expected that a woman should be a leader. Religion also comes in, same thing, headship of men. When it comes, so we have what we have a patriarchal system which focuses on the leadership of men. And therefore, even if a woman is educated, has the same qualifications, the normal tendency is not to give her the opportunity to stand because she's a woman. Okay. And then why are we also pushing for this law? Because it is this, other countries where they have managed to get a sizable amount of women in leadership and decision-making positions, it was through legislation. Because it was realized right from the West to even, we like to use examples in Africa. You mentioned some of them in your intro. This problem is also not peculiar to Ghana. It's all over many countries. You mentioned some of the international instruments. For instance, at the Beijing conference, for instance, they identified 12 critical areas of concern to women. One was women in policy and decision-making positions. And they chronicled the experience in many countries where very few women, even though as in Ghana, women outnumber men, but because of all these cultural, sociocultural reasons, etc., very few of them are found in decision-making positions. There are other realities that for a long time, when we got the opportunity to go have formal education, in many places, women didn't get the opportunity to go to school early. Some who got the chance to go to school didn't also go very far because, the expectation is that at a certain age, you should get married. Higher education wasn't important. More and more women gain access to higher education, late 50s, early 60s, etc. So that critical mass of women that were needed to be able to go to these places, aside the cultural and the sociocultural issues. So there are many, many things which doesn't make it possible. And what we are saying is that what will compel the state to ensure that we right this historical wrong is legislation, as has been done in many other countries. You mentioned so many of them. The latest of which is Sierra Leone, which is a country similar to Ghana with a similar historical background. They passed their law, and there's a minimum of 30% of women in parliament as we speak now, and in other decision-making positions. So we need that legislation to right this historical wrong.
Okay. Well, let me bring in Vera on this because I know CDD is doing a lot of advocacy in partnership with the AA coalition on this particular bill as well. But Vera, really, the question is, why do we need this law? Is it just a group of women coming together to push for something that you don't want to work hard for?
No, thank you, Everfine. Good evening to your audience. I think Auntie Sheila has given us a bit of context and background to why we need this. The bill recognized the marginalization of women, and for a very long time, women who make up more than half of the population have not been part of decision making, and for this really undermines our development, our democracy, issue about inclusion, participation. So it's not just it goes beyond just women issue, and there's an evidence to show that when women are part of decision making, when women are the core top management decision making, there are improvement. And so it's only smart for us as a country to ensure that women are part of decision making, women are part of leadership. And so it's not just even in politics, but even in private and public life as well. And it's important that we recognize that the affirmative action is not just women issue, but our own issue, a society issue, a Ghana issue that we should all come together to support. So it's not just any women out there fighting for this, but it allows a lot more young, especially young women, to come on board. If you look at the population based on the 2021 census, it tells us that if about almost 51% of the population are women, then it means that we need to really have that opportunity for more young people, prepare the way, give potentially girl child to invest in the well-being, so that young people will have equal playing field to take up position. So this goes beyond just becoming a women issue, to know that it is only important when women are part of this decision making. And for CDD, Afrobarometer actually did a survey. Our 2021 survey shows that significant number of people actually think that women should be given equal opportunity, and not only men who make good leaders. So it's important that when we have about 2/3, I think the survey said 2/3, about 67 of Ghanaians say that government should do more to promote equal rights and opportunities for women. So it shows that it's not just women issue, but more than just women issue. And it's important that the bill says to address these challenges. And it's also an accountability framework. It sets an accountability framework. It means that it's not just going to have to be there, but there will be a means to measure it. There will be a point to sit back and reflect and know that, are we doing well as a country? Which sector are we progressing? Which one do we need to? It also requires gender-sensitive budgeting. It requires that we add money. It's not just going to be the bill, but it means that when the law is being passed, there should be the addition to make sure that there's enough money to implement the bill as well, to ensure that we correct the errors that we have historically. So it's an important tool for us as a country, and as you mentioned, other neighbors and countries are doing it, and they are doing well based on what is being done. So I think that it's important that as a country, we have a second look at women participation in politics and
I'm sure I'll come back to you on the misconception and how we are hoping to cure it when it comes to the concerns that people have raised about this, those who would lack understanding about this particular bill. But let me bring in Lawyer Francis Xavier Susu. He's also a member of this committee that is tasked with working closely on this particular bill. But really, he wears two hats at this point. At least a human rights activist, pushes for gender as well, and also has to work on this bill. Some say you may be almost conflicted when it comes to working on this particular bill. But really, I'm sure you will talk about this, the current status. But let me talk about the concerns that this bill seeks to displace men and unfairly put women in an advantaged position. Really, is that accurate from what you've seen when it comes to this particular bill? Is that what it is? You have to unmute.
Thank you.
Much better.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm heard now. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, good evening to our cherished viewers. Let me say that conception is erroneous conception, to think that this bill seeks to displace men. It's completely erroneous. Now, like previous panelists have already contributed, we have a historical wrong. I mean, when laws are going to be made, you first want to identify the mischief that the law seeks to cure. Mm-hmm. And now we have established the fact that as we speak today, women are in majority, and yet they don't have equal stake when it comes to decisions that concerns them and things that borders on women. So the critical question is, how do we resolve that problem? Because these problems are historical, they are cultural, they are social. And the only way we can resolve this problem is by legislation. In fact, when you look at the 1992 Constitution of Ghana, Article 35(6) specifically provides that the state shall take appropriate measures to achieve reasonable gender balance in the recruitment and appointment to public offices. The question is that over the years, have we been able to do this? And the answer is no, because there are several articles you can check out there. Somewhere in 1960, under Nkrumah's regime, it was 10 out of the then 114 seats in parliament, 10 out of 114 seats. In 1969, only one woman made it to parliament. In 1989, I think there was a declaration that there were some guidelines for EC to ensure that women have equal stake at the political opportunities, but it never was implemented. Somewhere in 2004, there was a Women's Manifesto for Ghana. We demanded 30% for female legislature by 2008. We are in 2024 or 2020, wasn't it 2024? Mm-hmm. And yet we are nowhere near these goals that we have set for ourselves. And we're saying that when you look critically at Article 17 of the Constitution, the manner in which we have dealt with women issue amount to a positive discrimination against them. In fact, so it is important that in order to reverse the trend, we pass this piece of legislation so we can equalize the process. Now, remember that women are not necessarily looking for equality, because equality is giving everybody like 50-50 opportunity. That's not what we are looking at. But we are looking for equity. What is equity? Institute processes, programs, policies that gives them equal opportunity at the table. And that's what they are looking for. So that if you are going to appoint ministers, make sure that you don't discriminate against you. You don't say that women will go and give birth, they'll be pregnant and they'll go and give birth and they will take leave. So you are measured, or you are constrained to either promoting them or appointing them to some critical state infrastructure or positions. And so I don't think that the idea that women are seeking to displace men is valid. In fact, men, there is nothing to fear. I just want to encourage my colleague men, those in parliament and those out there is nothing to fear. The women are not coming to displace us.
But do you get a sense that women are not also willing, as it stands now, in spite of all the challenges that both men and women face, they are not willing to fight hard enough to also get the equity that they are looking for? Must it come through a law necessarily for them to get that equity?
Well, it must necessarily come through a law. The question is, I haven't seen a lot of activism. I mean, when I talk about activism here, I'm talking about the critical mass. We see CDD doing some great job, Auntie Sheila doing a great job. We have a number of people, CDD, Amnesty International, and a few other organizations out there doing a great job. But I don't get the feeling that the critical mass, in terms of more than 50% of our population being women, are getting actively involved in this. There are several women that have several handles, like social media handles. They have TikTok space, they have Facebook space, they have IG space, they have many followers. I haven't seen a number of them lead major, I would say major crusade, in support of bills like this. I mean, in other jurisdictions, you'll see several women marching on the streets, going to parliament, demanding, making like active demand that this bill be passed. So it is important that we are looking out for this law, but it doesn't just happen. In fact, legislation are usually driven by activism. And so the activism, I don't feel we have enough activism coming from the women's wing or the women's space. And I think that I'll use this platform to encourage that we need to see more of that activism. This bill must be passed, and it must be passed now. This bill must not go beyond this year. And every woman must get involved.
Rightly said. But let me bring in Mr. Enyimadu. Really, you are the helm of affairs when it comes to this particular bill. We've spoken to you extensively about a number of bills. Some say it is time for the affirmative action. But really, I would want to hear your position on this particular bill from what you've seen so far and your handling of what has come before you so far about this bill. Then we can talk about the current status.
Right. Good evening to your cherished viewers. Unfortunately, I am not the chairman of. There's a woman, Madam Patricia Ajay. She is the chair of the gender committee. But the speaker referred the leadership of Constitutional Legal to assist. So we've had a workshop on the bill about 2 weeks now. We've gone through the bill, and the report is ready to be laid in the House, and then we'll do the second reading. When we are done with the second reading, then we'll do the consideration. Parliament will be rising, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks' time. So I am not very sure that we can. That's the problem that I have with the press sometimes. When I say the truth, they would want to push, and especially if the press is interested. So we would not be able to do the bill this meeting because we have only 3. And what we seek to achieve, I'm in support of the bill. My brother Xavier Susu had already given you, for instance, he cites Article 36 of the Constitution, but we have practiced that. I am told that during Nkrumah's time, there was a conscious effort at giving some women the opportunity to go to Parliament. The Constitution, if you look at Article 17 of our Constitution, it says that everybody is equal before the law. And then it gives Parliament the power to make laws to correct the imbalances. Now we have practiced the Constitution for some time now, and we realize that men are in the superiority. Look at the interview you are granting. You have 2 women and you have 2 men, which is fair. That's what we want to achieve, parity. Now, how do we go about that? Now, if you are talking about, see, my brother Xavier introduced a word. He said that equity. Now, we are not, if it's about equality, women and men, we go to equal schools. In fact, throughout my training, I had my women teachers being my best teachers. I don't want to mention names, but they were very good. We have equal opportunities, but a society, and what Sheila said, that the social practices and other things, there are even jobs that they say that, for instance, when I started weaving kente cloth, it was that women are debarred from weaving kente cloth. Women are debarred from driving. It is quite recently that, so we'll get there. But if we have to go steadily, it will take maybe forever. So we probably have to do an intervention. And if you look at the law, both the memorandum and the bill, or the substance of the bill, is looking at a progressive way of achieving parity. So the proposal is to start from probably 30% of women participation in social, in public, in other economic life. Then we move on to another, and they target the years to that is a schedule that is attached to the law. And then we move on to 35% after some time, and before we come to 50%. I don't think the bill is aiming at getting 51% women participation or 60%. That would be women's superiority. But the equal opportunities are created. So we want equitable way of making sure that the society is well balanced. We could do that with appointments. In Parliament, just this weekend, we were at Koforidua on a bill. And the proposal, normally what we do is that when the president is making an appointment, we create room that 2 appointments or 3 must be women, or 1 of whom must be a woman. That is a conscious effort of making sure that when appointments are made, women would be considered. But I am against that idea. And I proposed, and I think the members that met agreed with me, that it is when we have considered everything, all the appointments, the chairman, this one, representation, and we don't have women in, then the president can intervene and say that I'm appointing women.
Why should that be the case? Why should that be the case, that it should be an afterthought? You think you would finish the appointment and you see that there are not enough women before you decide that you're going to add women? Why should that be an afterthought?
Instance, if we are creating a committee, we say that the chairperson must be the chairman of this organization. Then members, 4 members, one representing this society, one representing this organization, one representing this organization. Why do we have to assume that a woman cannot occupy that position? But in practice, that is what happens. So I would rather say that don't say women. If you do that, you are discriminating against women. Women, if you say that, well, you make conscious effort at this. But if we are saying gender, for instance, if all the committee members that we have agreed upon, they happen to be men, then you balance it with women. If they all happen to be women, then you balance it with men. And so I am interested in gender, not women in particular, but we are looking at gender parity, gender equality. That's what I'm looking at. The law has not helped us. Equality of the law is there. Nobody is discriminated because the person is a woman. No one is discriminated because the person is creed or religion.
That's where some would disagree with you, because really some women are, there's that kind of, should I say relegation? I don't know how, discriminated against because they are women. That's real. It's a reality. You don't think
so? I beg to agree with you on that, because there are, look at Mrs. Minka Premo, for instance. I mean, she has all her rights, she does everything, very intelligent, does everything. And we have a lot of several women. I had an association with Aula, I had an association with FIDA, and all these women are very good. But if we are looking at equity, then equitably we have not achieved that. But equality, we have all gone to the same school. We have all been, if we have to apply, you have to apply. And I think that any employer that says that I am not employing this person because the person is going to be giving birth and whatnot. So I think even the military and the police that said that when you join, you have to spend some time with them before you give birth. I think that is a thing of the past now. And if they haven't done that, then we have to make conscious effort at correcting that.
Okay, but Madam Sheila, the issue about 2 to 3 weeks for Parliament to rise, and the fact that they are not able to spend another 2 to 3 weeks to ensure that this particular bill is passed. I don't know, Mr. Enyimadu, I'll come to you on this, because we've seen how certain bills are passed with the speed of light, and a lot of work is done on it for it to be passed. Why not the affirmative action? Is that satisfactory for you, Madam Sheila Minka-Premo, that 2 to 3 weeks they are not able to deal with it before they go?
No, we are not satisfied. In October 2023, when this bill was laid in Parliament, it was originally laid under a certificate of urgency. And we were we're really looking forward to a very speedy processing of the bill. Later, we were told that Parliament needed to get input. Normally, when a bill is laid under a certificate of urgency, the time that they have is very short, and normally they will not invite other people to come and make inputs. So they decided that they would, we did our lobbying, we saw the speaker, we saw the majority leader, we saw some of the leadership, and they said, it's not likely to go through the usual certificate of urgency, but they'll try and speed it up. So we're really hoping that this first quarter, they would have finished working on the bill. We had the privilege of sitting, some of us had the privilege of sitting with them when they were going through, just refer to the Gender and Children Committee, and some members of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee members joined, and they invited, some of us presented memos, so they invited us to sit with them when they were doing their clause by clause consideration before coming up with their reports. So I thought that, before they rise, at least it would have gone for the second reading and be speeded up. So we are very disappointed. We were hoping that they would have moved faster, seeing this bill as very critical. Very, very critical. We just celebrated the International Women's Day, and you saw the theme. It is on pushing for inclusion.
Yeah.
The whole thing is about inclusion, creating opportunities, okay? And the journey, we want to achieve parity. One of the key instruments you're looking at is the Sustainable Development Goals, which says that all members of the UN, by the year 2030, should have achieved parity in different spheres of life, including in governance and decision-making positions, etc. So the way the bill is designed, you can't just push for parity once the law comes in. So as Honorable Anyumedu indicated, it's going to go, initially 30%, moves to 35%, and we are hoping that by the year 2030, we would have reached 50%. And as Vera indicated from CGD, the bill itself is designed in such a way that it has a measuring system as part of it. Once we achieve parity, that particular program will stop. It's not a law which is going to let women overtake men. So the earlier it comes on, the earlier it is passed into law, and we start that journey through equity to reach parity, the better. So, honorable members, we will plead with you that in the few weeks that you have, make this bill one of the priorities, so that it will quickly, that as Honorable says, the report is ready. Lay it for the second, have the minister come lay it for the second reading, and then it goes for the consideration. Please, you should speed up on this bill. It has kept too long.
At least we have two key members of that committee on the show. So, Mr. Anyumedu and then Francis Xavier Sosu. So you have 2 to 3 weeks. Really, why can't you do it before you go?
Well, the truth is what I've said. There are other bills before the House.
So it means that this is not priority?
Mrs. Minka-Premo, I know you are interested in the interstate succession law. It's been in our books all this while at the consideration stage. But the sponsors are not forthcoming. During the consideration, we were not sure at the committee level when we met at the hotel. There are things I can't just speculate or say here. But if you bring a bill to Parliament, you must be seen to be interested in the bill and prosecute it. But at the moment, we have as the constitutional legal, we have about 3 bills before us that we have to consider before we rise. Tomorrow, if leadership agree, we have to start with one and probably finish with another on Tuesday. So, we see when we are finished with this bill, I realize that the amendments that we have to make are a lot. So we have advised that even the Speaker wanted us to do it with the speed of light.
Exactly.
It will go faster if we are able to do the corrections and relay the bill. This is what we have advised. So if you could do it, correct all the mistakes and everything that we have corrected at the assembly press, withdraw and relay the new one when you have incorporated the amendments that we have made at the committee level. It will go faster than it is being anticipated.
Okay. Could it also be that those who are supposed to be leading it have not worked to your satisfaction to ensure that it goes through as fast as it ought to?
I'll give the credit to Mrs.
Agenda ministries, for instance.
Mrs. Minka-Premo, when it comes to women issues, not gender, even women issues.
Yes, I have a bias. My bias is women.
She's very vigilant. So, and sometimes, so she was there at the committee level. She discussed everything with us, and she helped for us to be where we are. And so if you show this interest, sometimes we even have some questions. See, parliamentarians are not professors, excuse my language. We don't know everything on earth. So we need to be aided. So people like the sponsors, they need to educate us most of the time when we have issues on certain things. That's why I would want, even when we are on the floor of the House, if the sponsors are behind us or with the drafters, they are able to prompt us so we don't make mistakes. So it is very, very important that when you bring a bill to Parliament, you have to follow up and make sure that we are able to come out or turn it from a bill into law.
Okay,
so it's very important.
Mr. Sosu, I would like to hear you on this. The issue about the push for this and the fact that the rest of the times that you have, you're unable to make it happen. You agree?
If I openly disagree with my chairman on this matter, I'm sure I'll be signing my death warrant because that will be breaking the laws of power. Because I serve on the committee as a deputy ranking member. Let me just add quickly that as for the procedural matters, we would always have issues with procedural matters. But I know Chairman, who is very, very experienced in this area, also knows that there are several ways to navigate some of the curves when push comes to shove. So I can only assure that because it's an area we all are passionate about, we are so interested in. Already, the gender minister designate have had some engagement. We've had like some engagements on these matters, and we've been looking at the best way forward to ensure that this bill gets passed with the speed of light. I am hopeful that even if this meeting does not see the obviously this meeting is limited, so passing may not be an option, but of course moving it one step forward between now and the time Parliament will rise, I'm sure we should be able to move this bill to the next stage, so that God willing, once Parliament returns back to the House, we can quickly do the second consideration. We can do the consideration and then get this bill passed before this Parliament expires. I believe that, if you look at the history of affirmative action and the nation's effort since 2011 to do something about, correcting the historical ills, and yet we don't have much to show for what we've been doing since 2011. I believe this is a time for us to show some more concern, some more urgency, and move this bill to the next level.
Okay.
And so I'm happy that maybe from tomorrow going, all of us who have interest in this bill, and I can assure you that a number of the female MPs have shown a lot of interest in this bill. So lobbying all of them to be on board to ensure that the few weeks ahead of us, we can do something concrete to ensure that the bill moves to the next stage will be one of the sure way out as we go to Parliament tomorrow.
Well, we'll talk about the misconceptions and some of the cultural practices that this bill will also cure. But really, I would like to get this out of the way, Madam Sheila Menka-Premo, the issue about the changes in leadership at the gender ministry, for instance, at least over the period. It looks like we've had issues in terms of leadership for those who have to push this to get to the level that it ought to. Now we have a new minister again. Over the period, at least, I think we've seen like 3 different ministers at the gender ministry. Looking at the long, we've had Adwoa Safo being out of office for a long time. And also after that, we've had some ministers coming, and now we have another one. Do you think that they've helped over the period to at least push the bill to where it ought to get to?
Thank you very much. When this bill started being drafted, it was as far back as 2011.
Exactly.
Okay. And it's gone through so far almost 7 ministers, I would say, from 2011 up till now. Okay. Under MPP, Honorable Otiko, Honorable Morrison, then Hadia, and then what? So for me, one of the things which has also really delayed the process, because every bill has to have an executive, pushing it. So this one is under the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. So the changes have negatively affected, because when every minister comes in, it's a big ministry, gender, children, social protection, so many things they're considering. Before they see this as a priority, sometimes time would have passed, a lot of time would have passed. So we are really hoping that this time round, we should really, really get this passed, now that it is in Parliament. This is the second time. I think the first time it was in Parliament, it was just late it was a short time before there was an election, so it didn't get the opportunity. This is in 2016 to be processed.
Yeah.
But this time it's been laid, well enough. And if priority, we are told that priority has been given to it, I think that Parliament should also give it the priority that is required so that we can get it passed as early as possible. We need this. Ghana is falling way behind, even in Parliament. I understand that there's an international body they belong to, the Interparliamentary Union. Ghana is not doing well at all. It's one of the countries, I think, 145th or something, is not doing well. And they've been
we may lose our membership.
Try.
Yeah, we may lose our membership if we don't up our
There's
game.
a risk.
Yeah.
Yes, so we need this law. It will help us in many ways. And as Vera indicated, it will help with our development. They said that it makes economic sense to ensure inclusion, okay? So that when it comes to every issue which is happening in some of these key decision-making places, the women's perspective will also be taken into consideration. Men and women, sometimes we don't think about things the same way. So you need those two minds to enable our development to accelerate and to be more sustainable. We need this law.
Well, we know without a doubt that there are some misconceptions, and that's why I bring Vera back in on this, really. How are we hoping to educate better? Because with other bills, at least, we've heard a lot of noise being made about it in terms of public education, advocacy, amongst others. But with our case, there's a concern about some misconceptions in there. We've been trying to cure it, but really, how are we hoping to better educate the public on this?
We need this bill, and I am equally also to express my disappointment that we are likely not to have the bill laid before Parliament goes on break. So I guess we have to keep talking about this. The last time we met the committee were very, very responsive. The agency at which they did work on the bill, I was in the room with Ms. Auntie Sheila. And so I am equally disappointed that it's not going to go forward now. So we'll continue our advocacy, and we need the media for these conversations as well. And just to also say that we are also mindful about how change can be. So we are actually looking at being progressive. So we are not going for 50%, 50-50 at a go. We are looking at going progressively. So let's look at 30%. This is how we are also being mindful and managing our own expectation to say that if we are being intentional about it, at least 30% is something we can start with. So it's important that we get male sponsors as well. Honorable was very supportive at the meeting, and so I am a little bit disappointed. But again, I think that we don't have to stop there. We need to. But from our Afrobarometer data, it looks like more and more many people are beginning to appreciate that we need women to be part of leadership, to be part of political decision making in every aspect of our. I think that even the situation at the local assembly is worse. And out of the 6,000 assembly members, we only had about 4.1%. We only had 256 elected members. That's over. So even at the local level, when you expect that women participation should be at a level, even that side, we are not doing well. So it's important that we are being intentional about this, and it's important we also encourage more and more young people. I think that the coalition have also created the youth, or let's say the young sub group, to also take it up. We've seen we've seen a lot of work being done by our older generation, a lot of effort, and so they are gradually also handing over to some of us.
But you get the sense that the youth are interested in this as well, as much as we've seen the older generation push for this.
So there was a gap at a point, and many young people did not feel that they were part of it. And until recently, Auntie Sheila, Abantu for Development, the coalition have stepped up, Net Rights have stepped up and said, okay, we need to really break that gap. So how do we, we've had a series of intergenerational conversation about why it is important for young people to also be interested in what is happening. Because if we are not careful, even if we have passed this bill and we are not preparing more young people to take up responsibilities, to take up the position, then we'll struggle. But so far, I think that we've had a lot more young people coming on board, and it's important that we do more of the education. And I'm happy that we are having this conversation, and maybe we'll need to do more. CDG and AFOBA, Net Rights and the coalition
Okay.
will have some responsibilities to go up there and have some education on.
Okay. Well, there's this concern that I have. Maybe you can educate us also on it. Some inimical cultural practices that exist already. Honorable Xavier Susu, and then maybe you can help us on this. Really, also the issue about the violation of some female workers' rights. In some cases, we are told that some women are not allowed to get pregnant for a number of years after they started that particular work. Mr. Yimedwenchi was making reference to what pertained previously in some of our security services. But really, will this bill be able to cure that for us as well? Is it in there? And how are we hoping that it will be able to cure it as well?
Well, I think that absolutely this bill would, to a very large extent, cure these levels of violations. And let me say that one of the reasons why many employers have gotten away with sometimes this level of discrimination is also because of the general economic challenges that we have. So it's more difficult for people to get jobs in the system. So sometimes taking on your employer when you have clearly been violated becomes a problem. So many women are not empowered enough to want to take their employers on. Sometimes even if they do, they don't get the necessary support. And I think that is what the crux of the matter is. I recall recently when we're having some stakeholder engagement on maternity leave extension. And many people were actually saying that even 4 months would be too less, that women need 6 months maternity leave. There were other women who were of the view that, honorable, so don't push too much. Pushing too much will mean that you are pushing us out of work, because there will be many more employers who will not want to employ us, because childbirth is a matter of fact and it's a natural thing. But notwithstanding the fact that we're even saying that we're proposing what we call maternity protection laws or maternity protection clauses, such that from the time a woman becomes pregnant to the time they deliver, they are fully protected under the law. And I think that those proposals that we're even having in that proposed bill would find a lot of support when affirmative action is passed. And so it's a legal framework that sets the balls rolling, right? And so all other pieces of legislation that seek to protect women, inclusivity, and so on and so forth can find, like some foundation on which they can thrive.
Okay.
So I think that the Affirmative Action Bill is indeed the foundational law out of which several other protectionist regime can be secured. So yes, I believe that the Affirmative Action Bill would be able to deal with some of these violations.
And then also the issue about disabled, especially disabled women, and who make up the larger chunk of persons with disabilities in this country, because we know that their counterparts, disabled men, are more economically empowered than they are. Really, I'm hoping this also, touches on it. Madam Minkapremo, and then Mr. Yimedwenchi, maybe you can also touch on briefly for us on this one, the issue about catering to the needs of women with disabilities.
Before I come to that, my sister was disappointed.
They are all disappointed. We are all disappointed.
Because the press are not surprised, because you are always disappointed when you hear the truth. Because when we spoke about the LGBTQ, the press were of the view that it should be passed within a week. And I told you that it's a process. We need to go through the process. Now, this one, Mr. Speaker very much wanted the second reading to be done last week. So at the Speaker's lobby, the chair and the ranking member of the Gender Committee proposed this idea, and I was with them, that the bill would rather go faster if you are able to make the corrections, incorporate the corrections, and then relay the bill.
Okay.
So it's unfortunate. It is not coming from anybody. Now, apart from that, there are other things that can also be. So you cannot disagree, Xavier. I was at the speaker's lobby when
I'm not.
listen to me very well. No, listen to me. Listen to me. The speaker was ready. The report was ready. We were ready to lay the report, the second reading. Then the chair, I'm giving you, these are facts. The chair of the gender committee and the ranking member informed me and consulted me that this is what they have proposed. So I went with them to Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker was disappointed, and Mr. Speaker pointed out and advised that they need to work on that hurriedly in order that when we come back to the House, we can lay it, do the second reading, and then go through it. So don't give any false hopes. Now, apart from that, Uganda and other countries, Ghana had signed on to a lot of international treaties. Yes, but you see, when we make law, we sign an international treaty. We need to make sure that we reduce it into our domestic law. We have to domesticate that international treaty that we are signing. So our constitution had given us equality. Every person is equal before the law, and but it has not helped.
And now we have discriminated against.
To borrow Mrs. Minka Premo's words, we need to correct the historical wrongs, write different history. And I would advise that most of the things we have to achieve, we need to amend our constitution and probably give proposals. Let me give an example. For instance, if you say that women in parliament are about 14%, now the NDC and MPP, now at the moment they have equal representation. The number is the same. If we want to increase that to, let's say, 40%, which parliamentary seat are we going to say that this no man should contest? We should leave this for a woman.
That will be at the political party level. At least they have measures that they can put in place for that to happen. And the EC is supposed to ensure that that happens.
We can educate. We can encourage. We have tried that. It hasn't worked up to now. So if we have to do that, to me, even as we have this time through to May before we come back, we can still talk and see how best. If we have to make some proposals in amending some aspects, some articles of the Constitution in order to make sure that we work towards a progressive way of achieving parity in gender, that would help, because we can talk about this, we can make the law, insofar as we haven't said that there are certain constituencies that are reserved for women alone. Men would contest, and we can't be sure whether women would still balance the equation for us.
Okay, but really, Madam Sheila Minka Premo, in wrapping up, the question that you keep on hearing, at least when we are making that push, at least we had some concerns about, appointments and all that during manifestos, asking the various political parties, actually the two leading political parties, to, make female representation and others as their priority. But the question is, when we are pushing for such a law, affirmative action law, asking for that equity or parity, equality that we talk about, do we have the women? Are they ready to take up these leadership positions? Is the key question.
Thank you very much. I think before I answer that, you had asked a question about issues about disability. And I'd just like to make a little comment about it. We have, when it comes to one of the, vulnerabilities that we have in our system is also issues about disability. These are what we call intersectional issues. So you can have a woman who is also disabled, and then they have like double this thing. That was taken into consideration. But we realized that we have the Disability Act, which deals with disability. Yeah. It's also a form of affirmative action in terms of things that should be done to address their issues. So we considered that this particular law is looking at affirmative action, gender equality. Okay, so the definition of women includes women with a disability. So that's one of the things that we've agreed on as far as this is concerned. So on the issue of, one of the weakest parts this law is this section 24 in the bill, which is the provisions dealing with the political parties. It calls on them in their manifestos and in even their leadership positions to ensure that they have enough inclusion, both men and women, etc. In terms of enforcement, the way that the provisions are is a bit weak.
We have just 30 seconds to go. We have to be wrapping up.
Okay, I believe that once those provisions are strengthened, then it should be possible to do some consequential amendments to the Political Parties Act to make some changes.
I agree with you 100%.
I know that, yes. I know that because the constitutional review you're talking about, we know how it is. Right now, we have just a few months to the end of this particular government's term. If you're talking about constitutional provisions, that would be very difficult. So let's use the existing provisions we have. Let's also try to domesticate some of the international instruments, even using this law. And this is stated in the memorandum to the bill.
Okay.
So
we wrap up at this point.
Pass the law.
Okay, they should pass the law. We are grateful for your time. That's you heard there, Madam Sheila Binkapremu, convener AA Coalition. You also heard Kwame Oyumedu, Chairman, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee, Deputy Ranking on the committee, also Francis Xavier Suswen. We also had Vera Abnado, Program Officer, CDD Ghana. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your time here on the probe. Another edition comes your way same time. Have a good evening.